We think reading great Christian books is vital for spiritual growth, so we're asking significant Christian leaders which 3 books have changed their lives. NT Wright is the most prolific biblical scholar in a generation. Some say he's the most important Christian apologist since C.S. Lewis. He's written over 70 books. He was formerly canon theologian at Westminster Abbey and Dean of Lichfield Cathedral. He's taught New Testament at Cambridge, Oxford, McGill, Harvard and many universities around the world. He was the Bishop of Durham before his current post as Research Professor of New Testament and Early Christianity at the University of St Andrews.
When I was first studying theology, a wise friend told me I ought to read C.S. Lewis's book, Miracles. And it was controversial then and controversial now, the question of did Jesus do miracles, how do miracles work? But it was Lewis who really first alerted me to the fact that in the Gospels, when all these strange things are happening, this isn't just playing tricks or conjuring tricks within the old world. These are signs of God's new creation breaking in. And in particular, the resurrection stories, which have been so difficult for people to understand. Was this really a ghost story or what? But Lewis grasped the fact that this is actually new creation, that Jesus has gone through death and out the other side into a new world, a new whole way of being. And he saw what many scholars actually haven't seen, that in the Gospels those stories are so strange, not because somebody's making it up 50 years later, but because something new has burst upon the world, which they were struggling to grasp, but which still can excite us with the promise of God's new creation today. My teacher was a man called George B. Caird, and he wrote a wonderful book just before he died, actually, called The Language and Imagery of the Bible. And that has been an enormous help to me, and I know to many other people. I was once in a seminar where somebody saw I had a copy of it, and he said, "That book saved my life," because Caird loved the Bible and was soaked in it, and teaches people how to appreciate the way that the language of the Bible works at every level. It's poetic, it's dramatic, it's all sorts of things. And particularly when it comes to Jesus and when it comes to the language about the future, he taught us how to understand what in the trade we call apocalyptic or eschatological language. When the Bible says the sun will be darkened and the moon will be turned into blood, etc., this is not a primitive weather forecast. This is a way of investing major future, what we would call socio-political events, with their theological significance, their depth dimension. Caird taught us how to do that, and that's been a real blessing and relief to me and to many others. I first discovered the poetry of T.S. Eliot when I was, I think, in my late 20s. I hadn't really studied modern poetry before then, and particularly his 4 quartets, which was his last great work, and really partly for which he won the Nobel Prize. This has meant an enormous amount to me and many other Christians. It's one of those poems which is inexhaustible. I don't claim to have understood more than bits of it, but there's something about it which, like a great symphony, carries you along, even if you can't necessarily whistle all the tunes as you go down the street. And it's about coming back to Christian faith as a resolution of all of the questions that he's had all throughout his life, as a result of which he talks about words and meanings and wrestling with those, and the poem itself is wrestling with words, and it finally comes back, every phrase and sentence that is right. This is what we're actually aiming for. The last great stanza of the poem is so memorable. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And then he goes on, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, when the tongues of flame are enfolded into the crowned knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. Reading poetry is one of those funny things which different people approach it differently. There's a danger of allowing the left brain to take over and say, I want to know what the meaning of every phrase is. But actually with poetry, like with music, you have to tell that bit of your brain to shut up and just feel the music, feel the rhythm, hear and sense the words as a sort of physical reality. And meaning will emerge from that, but it'll come through a different bit of you from how you would read, say, a mathematics textbook or something. So poetry works at several different levels, and Eliot was exploring all those different levels, and that's one of the reasons he's so exciting.
Well, I've got 3 great books to tell you about this time, and this one is called Disappointment, Doubt and Other Spiritual Gifts by Mark Yaconelli. It's a beautiful little book, just 150 pages long, and it helps us to reframe those really difficult experiences we have in life and see them as opportunities to draw close to God. Here's a book I've just discovered. It's called The Bible Speaks Today, The Message of Sonship. And it's in the Bible Speaks Today series, which normally includes Bible commentaries that you could read maybe on your commute to work. But in recent years, they've been looking at some big theological themes. And here's a really accessible, inspiring guide to what our identity in Christ is. What does it mean to be adopted into the family of God? It's excellent. And finally, I know I recommend to you all of his books, but here's a new one by Tim Keller called Making Sense of God, An Invitation to the Skeptical. And this book really helps us understand the place that religion has in society. I think it's a great book for you to read. It will help you understand how to defend your faith more effectively, but it's also a great book to give away to someone who wants to explore the Christian faith for themselves. Thanks for joining us this time. We look forward to seeing you on the next Books for Life episode.